Welcome to Elite Rugby S&C podcast, the best podcast talking all things rugby and strength and conditioning. At Elite Rugby S&C, we provide athletes with strength and conditioning programs that provides you with everything you need to become a beast and take your game to the next level. No matter what stage of the year or season, Elite Rugby S&C has a program for you. You can try before you buy, so try our 7-day $7 trial to get a taste of what we offer here at Elite Rugby S&C. So take your game to the next level, become a beast, and join Elite Rugby S&C today. G'day, Mitch. How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks, Knox. And you?
Yeah, going really well, thanks. How's Queensland been treating you?
Yeah, it's been really good, mate. It's been a good move. Nice and warm up here. Some really good people. I'm bumping into a lot of ex-Canberrans that are up this way, and it's been quite exciting to catch up with them.
That's good, mate. Hopefully you haven't gotten too sunburned, because the sun's a bit different up there compared to here to Canberra. Have you been sun smart up there?
Doing my best, mate. Always sun smart.
Yeah, that's good. So how's the year been going so far, and what have you been up to?
The year's been really busy so far. We've got a lot going on with Queensland Rugby League in terms of the women's game, so it's really ramping up the overall speed that younger girls are getting pushed into NRLW contracts and that sort of thing. So trying to upskill those girls to understand what it's like to be going into almost a full-time professional program. And we've still got some barriers there with the NRL and where the NRLW competition sits and where the women's origin games sit. But we've got our Queensland comp that started up 2 weeks ago, so they're up and running. A few little blips around contracts and things like that with girls. But getting out and just talking to those girls about where they need to be in terms of their physical qualities around their running, conditioning, their upper body and lower body strength and power. And just trying to promote those sort of biases into their training, talking with their coaches and S&C coaches across the state. So that's probably been the big focus early through January and that, and then we've moved into now where we're doing some work with the NRL Rise program, which is a program targeted at 13 to 15-year-olds for men and women, boys and girls. So there's a lot of that running through the state at the moment. We've got 23 regions across Queensland where that's running. So 23 head coaches, managers, S&C coaches, assistant S&Cs, assistant coaches. So getting around to those guys and selling the good oil of why they need to have S&C as part of their program, and helping coaches that are working with 13, 14-year-old group that don't have an S&C coach, giving them a bit of education around stuff they can just be doing on the field to help build up the resilience of their young kids, because these kids are going to sports schools where they're training 4 times a week in a sports school, and then they're going to their club training. They might be in a rep team, they might be playing basketball and cricket and all that sort of thing. So some of these kids are really getting smashed. So just trying to help them to understand the amount of demands on young kids these days, and how we can help them flow through so they still want to play rugby league or rugby or whatever sport it is. They still want to be able to play that when they get to 18 and just don't drop out of sport altogether. So it's probably the big shift in focus with what we're doing. And then we've just named a women's emerging Maroons team for the State of Origin series. It'll happen in June. So there's 32 players in that, and we've been going around, meeting up with each of those players, going through their individual performance plans and looking at where they need to focus on to be right for June, because they've got, as I said, their state league comp at the moment. They don't know what's happening with NRLW, so making sure that they're in the right frame of mind when they come to the end of May to go into camp to go and win 2 Origin games, although that hasn't been announced yet, but that's what's going to happen. There'll be 2 Origin games this year for the women, which is awesome.
No, it's fantastic, and a lot of things to digest there. But it's awesome to see that the girls have got a clear pathway now, and they're getting this strength and conditioning at a young age as well, because you don't want to get through all these years without getting some S&C assistance there and knowing how to train properly and take care of yourself and get to the top level. And it's expected of you. So it's really cool to see NRLs doing that. And then especially with the Rise program as well, you just sort of look at Rugby Union, you're just like, we need something like that. It just sounds amazing what the NRL's doing at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and just the sheer weight of numbers, and up in Queensland, rugby league's like a religion. Paper, all you see is rugby league reports and that, and unfortunately, rugby doesn't get much of a look in. I mean, they've got the Reds and that sort of thing going on up here, but you don't see a lot in the media about it. I think Triple M on a Tuesday night they do their rugby wrap up, and that's pretty good, and they get a few of the Reds guys on and that sort of thing. But other than that, it's Rugby League Central up here, that's for sure.
100%, especially with the Dolphins as well. They've been going quite well in the NRL. It's only rising the sport and making more people talk about it as well.
Oh, without a doubt. And the success they've had early on is incredible and a real testament to the program they've put together. So, yeah, hopefully they keep going well. And, the Queensland teams keep going well as well. That's a key for us up here.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how the Maroons bounce back this year if they can defeat the Blues in the State of Origin for the girls. And, it'll just be really good competition, because last year when I watched, I thought it was one of the best women's rugby matches I've ever seen. Like the skill level, how fast they were going, the hits. It was just awesome to see, and I'm glad we're getting 2 games. We get to see that twice this year, and hopefully very soon we can see it 3 times a year as well.
Yeah, well, it's in the pipeline for 3 games. There was some talk that it might have gone to 3 games this year, but it hasn't been announced. But the good oil is that it's 2 games at the moment. So we'll see. They could throw a spanner in the works and stick 3 in there, but 2 is what we're sort of focusing on at the moment. But we've got plans for a 3rd one just in case that gets thrown at us as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really exciting stuff. So growing up as a young lad, what sports did you play, and what was the main sport you decided to play sort of in the later years?
Look, I had a crack at pretty much everything as a kid. I think rugby league was my first sport. So I started, playing down there in Canberra and played through all the junior grades, but it was pretty easy to mix sports up as well. So usually rugby league was a Sunday game in Canberra at the time. Rugby Union was a Saturday, so there was a couple of years where I played rugby on a Saturday and rugby league on a Sunday. Then I had a crack at AFL as well, or Aussie Rules, and was playing that on a Saturday and doing the league on the Sunday. So league was probably the mainstay, and then during summer I always played cricket. So cricket and rugby league were probably my 2 main sports growing up as a kid. And then I was fortunate enough, I was probably good enough at league to get put into some rep teams and that. So training for league with the Raiders and that'd start, in November and that sort of thing. So I had to make a choice of whether I keep playing cricket or play league. So, I stopped playing cricket and focused purely on league when I got to about 17, 18 years old. So that's where I went. And then, unfortunately, wasn't the great rugby league player that I thought I was going to be. And so then, got into the coaching side of it. So that was really good, becoming a coach and getting involved in league that way. So, so that's pretty much what I did as a kid. But I used to play squash and had to go at soccer and so lots of different sports, I guess, growing up as a kid. Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you sort of on the back end of your rugby league career, is that when you decided you wanted to become a coach, or you had that thought in your head, I might not make it to the level that I want to make, but I still want to be involved with the sport and still be a part of it? Was that when you decided to become an S&C coach, and was it always an area that you wanted to become a coach as well?
Look, I sort of had and I always wanted to be a PE teacher. That's, I think, from when I first went into year 7 and they had these PE classes and PE teachers, I thought, what a great job that is. Just taking people out and playing footy and doing stuff like that. And I thought, well, that's what I want to do. So that was pretty much what I did in terms of my pathways. I went on and did PE teaching at uni, and I actually taught for 9 years and did PE and that sort of thing. So yeah, really enjoyed that. But I guess from an S&C point of view, from the time I was about 15, a good mate of mine, his dad bought him a gym set up that we used to train in his gym, and like he just sort of bought him the weights and didn't say, oh, this is how you train or anything. And so we used to buy muscle and fitness magazines and Joe Whiter Flex and all that, and we'd just go through the magazines and look at the programs and the tips on lifts, and we just sort of started writing ourselves our programs, and we'd do it 3 or 4 times a week in the gym, and using that to as part of our training for rugby league mainly. So I did that for a number of years, and then when I started playing junior grades with the Raiders, it was pretty much my first exposure to an S&C coach, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. But no, they're pretty sergeant majorish and that sort of thing there. So at the time I still, PE teaching is pretty cool. You get to do a lot of sports, and the S&C role at the time, they just called it, they were sports trainers essentially, so it wasn't really strength and conditioning. And then when I'd started playing 21s with the Raiders, we were in with the main grade. So there was, first grade, and was when there was reserve grade and under 21s. We used to train under Sean McRae was the strength and conditioning coach at the time. He was also a PE teacher. So I started to think about, maybe this could be a good career for me here. And we also had Kelvin Giles, who's, probably arguably one of the goats of strength and conditioning in Australia, if not the world. He was our strength and conditioning coach, and he was the sort of man that he could get people to do stuff they didn't really want to do. And as a player at the time, I felt like I'd crawl over broken glass for Kelvin. He just inspired people so much, and so he's had a big influence on me as a coach and the way I coach. Just trying to inspire athletes to be better, to get people to do shit they don't necessarily want to do. So from there, I stopped playing and went into coaching. Wasn't really sure what the pathway was into S&C. It just seemed to be something where ex-players got a role if they they were into their fitness and that sort of thing. They'd pick up a role. But I ended up doing some coaching with the junior reps in the Raiders, and at the time I was finishing my PE degree, and I was working in a gym as well. So I picked up a job in a commercial gym, fitness centre, running circuits and writing programs and that sort of thing. And the Raiders at the time said, look, would you be interested in doing the S&C with the junior rep programs? And I said, I'd love to do that. That'd be great. So that's pretty much where I started, working in the league at that time. So I was still an assistant coach, plus picking up the S&C, and then eventually transitioned into doing the S&C, but I was still teaching full time. So I was teaching whatever 8:30 till 3:30. Then we'd have guys in the gym. We had with the Raiders, we had 2 different programs set up at Erindale College and Dixon College. So we'd have Dixon College guys would be in the gym early in the morning on a Dixon College. So I'd go in with those guys, go and teach, and then go and get the Erindale guys in the afternoons and do it that way. And then fortunately enough, I ended up teaching at Erindale College. So I was able to look after all the Erindale College boys at the time and get their S&C done and that sort of thing there. So that was where I started off in S&C in that sort of area, but it was more, just that initial interest from myself around, how I can get my body to be better and, play sport better as a result. There's probably a phase I went through where I thought I was going to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger as well, and went right down that path. But it was all good fun, just working out, how strength training affects your body, how different running conditioning modalities affect what you're doing, and then how your speed comes into that as well. So, exciting times. And again, I'm still lucky to be doing it now as a full-time job, and people like you ring me up, want to talk about it, so it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's a really cool pathway to becoming an S&C coach, and something that I can relate to as well. You think you're going to go far in the sport that you want to do, and unfortunately some things happen, and then you start to realize, oh yeah, I want to still be involved in the sport, and I don't necessarily want to be rugby coach, but I want to do something still with the sport, and that's where S&C comes in. And I think I was exposed early to S&C with yourself, with the sort of junior gold or the National Talent Program for rugby. So that was my first exposure to S&C, and I thought this is pretty cool, and it was really cool to see that that could be a career option for someone who didn't go as far as he wanted to go in rugby. So yeah, it's just awesome to see that you did that, and you did have to take on a few different roles, but eventually that full-time role came around, which is awesome. I think that's something that S&C coaches resonate with is you're not going to get that full-time role straight away. You could, but most of the time you have to work with a couple of different sports and do a couple of different things and work in a gym as well, in a commercial gym, and then eventually you will get that full-time role.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a lot of different pathways to take to get there, but I think the big thing is just trying to get as much knowledge and as much experience and exposure as you can across the board.
100%. So a question you asked me several years ago when you invited me to a little meeting at Brumbies HQ, and I found that meeting awesome, and it's always stuck with me ever since. So I wanted to ask you the question back to you. What is your current coaching philosophy, and how has this coaching philosophy changed over the years and across different sports?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and I guess just to backtrack a bit on it to start with, I think I didn't really think about philosophies and that sort of thing early days as a coach. It was sort of you just went along and you coached, you just did your stuff, and I was really fortunate a few years ago to read a book by Pete Carroll, who's the Seattle Seahawks coach, and he wrote a book, Win Forever, and he talks about you should be able to talk tell someone your philosophy in 25 words. So I really sat down and I thought, well, what am I going to, what are my 25 words around my philosophy? And I think it comes down to a couple of key points. And I think it's, one, can you create a positive environment for your athletes? And that environment, you want to be able to see continuous improvement and growth in your athletes. So wherever you are, regardless in the year, are they improving? Is there growth? Are they learning what they're doing? And also having around that some really high standards around how they move about the gym, but also what the expectations are around where they need to get to within whatever component is of your S&C. So whether it be a running benchmark, whether it be a lifting benchmark, a speed benchmark, whatever it is, setting high performance goals so that they can chase after them. To make sure they're going to be successful at the highest level. So it's more than 25 words, but it's probably putting into play, how I think about things. It's, there's got to be continuous improvement across the year, I think is a big point. And then creating that environment that allows that is super important.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book, and I'm a big Seattle Seahawks fan, so I've definitely read the book and seen the culture that Pete has created at the Seahawks, and he harps on about creating a competitive environment, but it's also an environment where if me and you are competing against each other in the same position, we're building each other up, and whoever gets the starting spot at the end of the day, I'm happy for you, but I'm going to be competing against you to take your spot as well. And it's not done out of I hate that person or something like that. It's done in good nature and in a positive environment, which he has created. And you just see it all the time. I'm very biased to Seattle, but you see it all the time. Like we create players out of low draft picks or free agents who get undrafted. And these guys just become very talented and then get the pay rise that they deserve because they've put in the hard work. They've been given the opportunity in a really good environment to shine. And yeah, it's just awesome to see, and I think it's a really cool book to read and then understand how to build your own philosophy off Pete's philosophy as well.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get some kickbacks from Pete for that good plug.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool to get him on the podcast.
You mentioned that competitive environment. That's a key. With the higher level sports that where they're very competitive and professional, adding that competition, and that's what creates the fun. And I think that's a big thing. Is your group having fun? Have you created that environment where they're having fun, they're getting the work done, and they're being successful? And if they see themselves improving, they're going to be more positive about what they're doing. So, that's a crucial factor for me.
Can you give us some examples from, say, your time at the Brumbies or with the Rugby Sevens or even with the Rugby League girls that you've put in some competitive sort of things into the program to make them sort of, compete against each other?
Yeah, I think one of the simple things is I've used GymAware for a long time, and just being able to use that velocity-based training and using the leaderboard in the gym. So, we're very fortunate at the Brumbies to have screens and that sort of thing in there, so we could put it up and could say to the guys, all right, this is what we're doing today. We're all trying to hit 0.7 meters per second. Let's say you can hit 0.7 meters per second with the greatest load and measure stuff that way. We did stuff around, putting light gates and stuff into the gym as well. So, looking at 10-meter times and, who can get the quickest 10-meter time when we've got a real focus on that acceleration components. So things like that became quite good, even just having like med ball relay chases and things like that. Out on the field, just adding different elements within, little competition games, your game-based conditioning and that sort of thing. Splitting up into teams that compete all year, like you keep the same teams all year, and they can give their team a name after one of the greats of the club. And we found out the hard way that you don't let them pick names just randomly, because they come up with all sorts of weird things. So try and have a theme to it. I think one of the best ones we did was with the Canberra Vikings in the back, I think it was 2019. Because it was the Vikings, and a few of the boys and myself and the coach, we'd all watched the Vikings series. So we tried to put a whole Vikings theme to that whole competition, the NRC competition, and we had axe throwing and things like that for the player who got man of the match. They got an axe with their name engraved on it, and then we went out and there was a target that the coach had set up so we could throw the axe at the target, and it just built that whole fun theme. And we had Viking games and all that sort of thing. So it was, I think, just building that fun element into it, and it just takes them away from the drudgery of day-to-day training all the time. So yeah.
That's awesome. Some really good examples there. And I would say definitely put that into your program if you haven't done that already, or you might be doing it and you don't know that you're doing it. But adding that competitiveness to it, to athletes who are very competitive, it just makes the program a lot more enjoyable, as you said, but just just more fun to be around as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've had the opportunity to coach 3 different codes of rugby, Rugby Union, Rugby League, and Rugby Sevens. Were there any key differences in S&C programming for each code that sort of stand out?
Well, I think at the time, initially, in rugby league, I hadn't had much exposure to other areas, but coming back to league now, using experiences from rugby sevens and working in rugby's really helped me, I suppose, hone my skills within rugby league as well. And I think one of the key things is going back to what the actual game looks like and what the metrics of the game is. And so I've been really fortunate, I guess, not recent times now, it's been around for a while now. GPS gives us a really good insight into what the game metrics look like, and then how your actual training metrics match or actually are better than what the game metrics are. Because if you just train at game metrics, when you get to a worst case scenario in a game, you actually at that, or been able to train at that intensity. So knowing what the worst case scenario looks like in a game, and whether that's 180 meters per minute when you're playing in a game that's usually at 90 meters per minute. But across the 3 codes, rugby sevens, rugby and rugby league, I guess, your rugby runs a bit slower than rugby league does, and then rugby sevens runs a lot faster than both of those 2 sports together. So there comes around, different metrics that you need to look at, particularly from a GPS point of view. And one of the biggest things I saw initially with rugby sevens was looking at the rate of accelerations to decelerations to change of direction really changed. And that was working with a guy, Andrew Gray, who has his own GPS analysis company. And we looked at, well, in rugby sevens, for example, there was 1.5 accelerations to 1 deceleration to 6 change of directions that were happening in a game. So if you look at a tournament, 6 games, that was what we're seeing on average, that sort of ratios of acceleration, deceleration, change direction. Then when we looked at our training data, it was a 2 to 1 to 3. So you can see that, from a change of direction point of view, we didn't have as much change of direction happening in training. So that was something that we decided we need to try and implement a lot more, and probably to our detriment to start with, because we went probably a little bit too hard on the change of direction and ended up with some groin issues and things like that. But again, once we figured it out and got the volume and the quantity quality right of that change of direction, it really showed us the next level our players could go to, which was really cool. But again, we see that sort of thing happening in rugby, the switch in looking at extensive to intensive running. So the extensive running is more that higher end running compared to the intensive stuff, which is looking at more around that change of direction, the denser drills you do, and the short footwork and a lot of stuff that you do around your acceleration mechanics and footwork at the line within rugby. It shows up on those GPS metrics. And then again, looking at league, the league, come back to looking at that change of direction and accel decel component. And there's a measure that has been around for a while, that accel density, where you're looking at the number of accelerations, decelerations, change of directions within a minute. And where do they sit within a game? And Andrew Gray came up with these metrics around, if they're at 44% of the time, that's the sort of level you want to be at for your accels and change of directions as an interchange forward within rugby league. So they're coming on for short, sharp hits and that sort of thing. So again, across all of those three sports, that accel change of direction stuff is a very important component. And then how you actually moderate that around the overall running metrics of the game. Rugby Sevens being the shorter 14 minutes, but then across a whole weekend, they're getting upwards of that 78 minutes. How's my maths? It doesn't matter. But they end up with pretty much equivalent to a full game of 80-minute rugby league, rugby union sort of stuff across there, but it's at a much higher intensity than what the other two are at. So those sort of metrics are important. But I think, across all of those three codes, you need to be pretty consistent in the work you do within the gym. And you only get very small windows of opportunity, really. You might get 2 or 3 sessions a week. You might get 3 hours. So what are you going to get the biggest bang for buck? So I think in terms of that, keeping in your main components about your squat hinge, your push-pull components, really important there, your core, your single leg lunge patterning and that sort of thing. So keeping in those key elements, I think people try to get a little bit fancy at times. But across all those sports, there's still key characteristics around lower body and upper body power that are really important for all three games. So I think I got a bit off track there, Nork. So
no, that was awesome.
I suppose the one last thing is, not everyone's got access to GPS. So I think I don't think there was a study done by Rudy Meir a long time ago when the actual Tweed Seagulls were in the NRL comp back in the early 90s and that sort of thing. And he did a ball in motion or a time in motion study there, where he worked out what the ratio work to rest was across the game. And I think it's still really valuable. And something I did up here with Queensland Rugby League is look at ball and play initially, just looking at the, footage of games as to, what the ratios of work to rest were, to say, well, how are you designing your training programs around this? Like if we've got, periods of play that can last for 6 minutes without a break, are we actually doing that in training where, we're doing 6 minutes of work at, 90 metres per minute plus sort of thing. So the ball and play is a really good way to go where if you don't have access to GPS. So I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, and that's something I've seen in the past and done a little bit in as well, because you have access to, or most first grade teams these days have access to the games being filmed, and you can easily just do that, just get a stopwatch or whatever it is, or you use an Excel spreadsheet and set up some data that way and just press, start, stop, and just easily do that. And I think for me as well, for younger coaches, is just looking at training, just look at your training. Are they doing enough change of direction? Do you think they're actually doing that? And is it more planned? Are you putting in some decision making into that change of direction? And then look at the game and you see, they look like they're lacking some change of direction or lacking some top end speed. let's go do that in training as well. So definitely use your coaching eye. And then once you get the opportunity to use the GPS metrics and data and all that, it's just going to aid your performance. And you might see something that GPS misses, or vice versa. GPS picks up something that you're missing, and you can use that hand in hand. And then you're just going to grow your toolbox, as people say.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, but yeah, GPS, it's awesome to use, and yeah, I hope everyone one day gets to use it, and just don't get too lost in the metrics though, because it can produce quite a bit of data for you.
Yeah, just keep it simple. The old KISS principle.
100%. So, how does an S&C coach create a successful program to meet the needs for the players, but also meet the demands of the sport?
I think it's really important to understand the game demands. So it doesn't matter what sport you're working with. Understand what the demands of the game are, and I think in more recent years, a lot of coaches have got a game model that they work with, particularly within rugby league and rugby union, and then relating those game demands and the game plan to how you're actually going to put your program together. So that way you can speak the same speak with the coaches, but then also with the players. So example, if you're saying, oh yeah, we're going to do squats in this program, or we're doing 40 meter accelerations, or whatever it's going to be, or max velocity, or we're doing wicket running, how do those relate to the game? And so then going back to the game plan as to, well, in the game plan it says, well, we want to have good foot drive into contact. So foot drive into contact, what does that look like? We need to have good lower body strength to be able to do that. We need to be able to do that bilaterally and unilaterally. So that's why we're putting these exercises in your program, because leg drive into contact is a big component. It might be controlling the ruck, and there's great research around from Tim Gabbett and Michael Speranza around that people who are better tacklers and control the ruck better have better upper body strength and power. So coach, everyone's doing a bench press, but we're doing a bench press because we want to be able to build that strength, and then we need to be able to use that strength in an explosive way. So we're going to be doing some med ball stuff where we're doing explosive chest passes, we're doing clap push-ups, we're doing jammer presses, those sort of things, so we can actually express that strength in a powerful way, which is going to relate to what we're doing in the game. So those, the game metrics are really important to be able to build into what you're doing within your strength, your speed, and your running conditioning programs.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely understanding the game model of what the head coach wants to, play with can make your program much easier for athletes to buy into, because at times I've probably learned this the hard way, just putting stuff in because I thought it was good, but not actually understanding the reason why. And once you understand that reason why and can say, hey, we want to do this for this outcome because it's in our game plan, athletes like, oh yeah, I understand that, and they'll do it much more with more intent and do it more efficiently as well. So I think it's really cool to use the same language that the head coach is using, and you're using it as well in your gym program, but also your speed and conditioning work as well.
Yeah, and that game, it doesn't matter, what sport it is. I mean, different sports I've worked with, it's, what are the key elements you want to get better at? A good example is working with rowing, a men's pair in rowing, and we did some biomech on, their strength and power through the stroke. And the person who was sitting in the bow seat, so controlling the boat, and the stroke seat both had different force characteristics through the stroke. So one didn't have the power to put into the stroke, but had strength at the back end of the stroke, and the other one had power at the start, but then dropped off really quickly. So even though the two were training in the same boat and doing everything together, the way we worked their gym program was different to try and increase their, one of their guys, their power and that, so they can initially get power on with the oar to start with. And then the other guy, we're looking at, well, we need to build up that strength endurance capacity and their strength elements, so the power that they put in, they can then keep that strength on so they can finish the stroke off well. So again, that was, working with, the head coach and the biomechanist to be able to come up with a solution to how we get these guys better.
Yeah, that's really interesting right there, and you could probably relate that back to any sport as well. And
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating as well. You're both doing the same work, but from just looking at it, you probably think they're doing the same work. But yeah, one's working harder at the start, one's working harder at the end. And yeah, that slow, subtle change in their gym program would make a massive difference out there on the water. Hi, everyone. We just want to take a quick break from this episode. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far and all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby S&C blog today. We provide free exclusive content every single week to our subscribers. You'll find our website link in our bio below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby S&C on all social media platforms to all your family and friends. Thanks again for all your support, and now back to the episode. That's awesome. So in-season Rugby Union and Rugby League are about to start for many athletes, or it's probably started for many people as well, depending where you are in the country and the world. What does a typical in-season S&C program look like for you, Mitch, if you're just being very general out there?
Look, I think you start with your game day and work backwards from there. So typically, if you're playing on a Saturday, the day before, your team may have a captain's run there. So captain's run, and that's always a challenge. Is it the captain's run or is it the coach's run? Is the coach trying to get extra work into them and that sort of thing? So I think keeping that a really low key session where the players are if they need to get a bit of run into their legs, they want to open up a little bit, great, but just keeping it pretty on the down low. Shouldn't be getting over more than 2Ks of distance in that time. Keeping the session short, sharp is pretty much key. Then that G-2 day, so the day before your captain's run. So again, captain's run was on the Friday, the Thursday. There's different schools of thoughts out there. I was in a meeting with some stuff I do with the ASCA, and we're talking with Rugby League guys, and they've said, we've gone to the Rugby Union model of G-2 is where we do our intensity session. I know Penrith do that quite heavily, and when I first started at the Brumbies for my second stint, that's the way we were doing it on that G-2 day. Was a high training load, good intensity. It was a short session though, so they're doing that there, and then into the captain's run, and then game day. So with that day there, we moved that to the G-3 day with the Brumbies. So gave them that rest day on the G-2, and that's what we've been doing with the Maroons women as well, and across our junior rep programs is recommending that G-2 day is a rest day, so they can get recovery and do any of the sort of hydrotherapy modalities, all that sort of thing on that day. So it gives them a couple of days off, and particularly if that intensity day you get some eccentric loading and any soreness, at least by 48 hours post that session, they're already starting to come good before the game. Whereas on that G-2 day, if you're doing a good intensity session there, you may be still a little bit sore coming into game day, which mentally may or may not affect the players. But different models, again, talking with some of the other NRL S&Cs at the moment, they're going to, because senior players can't go back-to-back days of running, so the coaches have modified how they do their training week. So they have a day on feed, day off feed. So their field sessions, I'll typically have that G-2 being their last intensity day. And because they're at a higher level and have good training backgrounds and a good platform on which to work with, they're probably not getting a sore come that game day. But if you're working with younger players or less experienced athletes, the potential is to have some residual soreness on that game day. So again, it's a matter of talking with your coach about what you do. For me, I think that G-2 day, it's good to have as a rest day, and then that G-3 becomes your intensity day. So if we're coming back, so Wednesday would be that intensity day. The Tuesday then becomes more a volume day, where they're getting through a lot of reps and work in terms of the skills and stuff they want to work on for the weekend or develop, and it's probably a good day for the contact, because when they're going to be sorest is when they're having that recovery day on the back of their contact and that sort of thing. So they're getting some work in there and then starting to freshen up again for the weekend. Then the Monday after the weekend game, is predominantly a day where it's the learning from the weekend, maybe going through walkthroughs and that sort of thing on field, trying to get in place the things that they want to work on the following day. So we talk about on that Monday getting through learning and then practicing all that stuff on the Tuesday, then executing on the Wednesday, freshening up on the Thursday, Friday, getting through the captain's run, then the Saturday being good to go. But again, as I said, there's a few different modalities out there. And as I said, the NRL guys I was talking to, they've said, we've gone to a rugby model. And we said, we went to a league model. So I think it's switched there where that G-2 is a rest day or an intensity day. In terms of the gym stuff around that, I like to get the heavier lifting and lower body components done earlier in the week. So on that Monday, the Tuesday is more upper body and posterior chain component, because again, with that posterior chain eccentric loading, 48 hours DOMS is going to fall on that Thursday when they're most sore. And then Wednesday is predominantly more a power-based day. And then picking up, depending, different players like to pick up some upper body components on the captain's run day, and then maybe even doing a short primer on game day as part of that training week. In terms of like the speed component, speed always like to keep two elements of speed. So, the Excel change of direction needs to be in there, and then a max velocity as well. So if you've got GPS data and you can look at and see whether people are, getting up over that 90%, that's a really key component of, that inoculation against hamstring injuries and things like that is making sure they're running fast and running fast often. And red flags come up if you haven't, knocked into that 90% for the last couple of weeks. So trying to keep them up in that sort of area. So, and then the last one around the running conditioning is generally on that, the Tuesday, getting the running conditioning into them. So the MAS work, I think, has worked quite well. I mean, you can structure stuff around it. Dan Baker's put out some stuff recently around maintaining conditioning levels throughout a season. You need that minimum dosage of 8 minutes of work. And then if you're trying to improve it, increasing by a minute each time will help to improve that aerobic conditioning throughout the season. So you can scale up and scale down that running conditioning component in there. Again, adding different variety to the MAS is really key, because, just that straight line or up and back shuttle stuff can become quite boring. I like to add in where, they're running through traffic as well. So you start, a group at one end, a group at the other end, they're running through traffic, they change direction within the MAS stuff. So just adding in some more variety around the running becomes really crucial around trying to get that done. But again, that, during that in-season period, making sure you've got at least some sort of stuff on that Tuesday. And then, at the higher level, if you've got players who haven't played on the weekend or only played limited minutes on that Monday, getting some top-up running in there as well is really important.
Yeah, it's a great insight right there. And I think athletes and coaches will start to look at their training and start to, program it a little differently now after hearing that. It's awesome.
Cool.
But yeah, so definitely hitting around, 2 to 3 gym sessions. You're getting your conditioning in there. It doesn't have to be as much volume compared to your preseason. As you said, it just needs to be hitting certain numbers that you have done some work from the preseason and bringing it into the in-season, hitting your change direction, hitting your max velocity, and doing some acceleration stuff as well, but not overdoing it. And I really like how you have a rest day in there. Some people do forget you need a full day's rest if it's on that Thursday, or even talking to Ben Donaldson from the Waratahs, I think their Wednesday is their full day off as well. But just having that full day off to just recover, relax, go do something else, hang out with some family or friends, or do some active recovery, it's definitely important in season, because rugby's just rugby. It could be Rugby Union, Rugby League, Rugby Sevens, doesn't matter what it is. Like, it just takes up a lot of time in your week and your life, and you might just need some me time in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And, they need that break from us as coaches and from each other as well, although a lot of them tend to go and play golf together and things like that. So
yeah, there's nothing wrong with playing golf though.
Yeah, exactly right.
Just make sure they get the carts. I think that's one piece of advice you say to them. If they're playing 9 holes, yeah, you can walk, but if you're playing 18 holes, that's 4 or 5 hours, depending how good you are at golf. Could be a bit longer if you're not the
Yeah.
best, and it's a bit of walking. So definitely get the carts to save the legs.
Yeah.
Mm. So, what advice do you have for S&C coaches out there wanting to work in rugby union, rugby league, or rugby sevens? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Look, again, it's just about getting your skills up as an S&C coach, and just taking opportunities that come along. As we spoke about a bit earlier, people are too keen to get into full-time S&C roles early on, and you need to do your time. You need to spend time looking at different sports. You need to make sure you're getting upskilled. The ASCA, I'll give a plug for, because I'm part of that organisation. Getting in and making sure you've got your level 1, your associate L2 course, and then moving through the whole scheme. Whether you become a professional level coach and then move on to do your elite L3 coaching course as well. Those things hold you in really good stead. You meet a lot of different people in those courses, and those people, depending on how you get on with people, may give you little insights or open doors to other opportunities for you. So I think getting that stuff done. The other thing is looking at getting a mentor within the sport you want to move into, and getting a mentor is a really interesting phase of your life that you need to go through. And a lot of people just come up and go, John, will you be my mentor? And I go, oh yeah, what do you want to do? And they go, I don't know, I want you to be my mentor. So again, the onus is on you as a mentee to come up with what you want to actually learn, and what you want to get from a mentorship. So, if you come along to me, I'll say, well, what do you want to get out of this mentorship? What do you want to learn about? What's the key components? And there may be some stuff that I can't help someone with, but I know someone who'll be able to help them. So, get somebody that's a mentor. And then the other thing is you need to, pass on that information as well. So make sure you're working with someone at a lower level, or you've got a friend or something that you can pass that information on to, because then if you're able to disseminate that information onto someone else, that's part of your learning as well. If you can explain it, hey, you've learned something. So get yourself a mentor, also have a mentee, and start hanging out around footy fields and things like that. Don't be creepy about it, but start trying to get into those environments and be willing to do stuff for nothing. And that's a challenging thing. If you want to get into it, you got to spend the time. If you're reading a book, you don't get paid to read a book. Same thing. You go and talk to a coach and hang out at the field, do a couple of weeks at the field. It's 4 or 5 hours. If you want to read Pete Carroll's book, unless you're a really fast reader, it's going to take you 6 or 7 hours to read the book. So think of it in terms of that, rather than, oh geez, I'm just standing around watching stuff. Take notes. Try and learn. Ask questions. That'd be my best advice.
Yeah, 100%. I love the advice around being a mentor and being a mentee as well. And something it does rub off on you, like the stuff that you do learn, like, the question I asked you before about philosophy. I'd never really thought about, philosophy of my coaching until that time we had that meeting a few years back. And now I do have a philosophy. And then another piece of advice that stuck with me from yourself as well is how, like, exercise selection when programming, you have your weapons and you have your armor. I still use that today, and I actually did a blog post for Lumen as well, and I was using that example, and I did give you a shout out as well. It's in the process, but just weapons and armor, and I use that to my mentees and just other coaches I talk to. That's how I program. I keep it so simple like that. I think it's a great tip that you've given me, and I've made sure to give it on to other people, and also mention your name as well while giving that piece of advice.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I mean, that's something I got off someone else. Andrew Kroll is the master of weapons and armor, and he used it when he was at the Cowboys, because it was a big military base up in Townsville, and they talked about what are your weapons and armor, and I thought, oh, that's a really cool idea. I'll take that and use that. So with the Brumbies, we talked about the war horses, and what are your weapons and what are your armor there. So again, Eddie Jones talks about, the best coaches are the best ideas thieves. So, get out there and, thieve as many ideas as you can. Give people credit, who've given you those ideas as well.
Did you want to quickly explain the weapons and armor? Because I'm sure there's people like, what are they talking about this for, and how does it relate back to S&C coaching?
Well, and the weapon stuff is, what's going to be your point of difference in the game, and what are we looking for? Go back to that game model. It might be leg drive through contact. So you're running into two Herculean guys. They might be weighing in excess of 220 kilos, and you're 90 kilos, 80 kilos, 100 kilos, or whatever. You got to be able to drive through contact. So that work that you do in the gym, maybe around a squat. So we talk about, well, a squat is that's your weapon. It may be a Bulgarian squat. It may be a jump squat, or those sort of things. They're all weapons that help you be better at that component. And then your armour comes down to whatever our risks or limiting factors that may occur within training and the game. And the big ones around, particularly in the women's game at the moment, ACL injuries, men's game around hamstring injuries and groin and that. So what exercises are we putting in that are providing us that armour or protection, so we can express those weapon skills within the game. So that's why I like to talk about it and get really excited about the weapons that you're using. This is a weapon. You're an outside back. You need to be able to run 40 metres really quick. So how are you going to do that? And we need to have really good triple extension. What's triple extension look like in the gym? And we might be doing cleans, we might be doing jump squats. Okay, but we need to protect it as well. So we need to have our RDL components in there. We need to have our Nordics. We need to have our isometric hamstring holds. All those sort of components, our weapons and armours built together to be able to give us that great performance.
There we go. You've heard it here first. Weapons and armor. It's such a great term, and if you do struggle to, talk to your athletes about programming and exercise selection, just putting them in those two simple terms is easy to do, and I've found it to be really effective as well. So, being the head of performance or a physical performance manager, how do you create a successful team that provides the best service to the athletes, and also work as a team collectively to put the athlete first and make sure you're not butting heads too much and going off one way or another way, or building up your own sort of silos as well? So yeah, how do you build a successful high performance team?
Look, that's a really big challenge. It's probably more challenging than your other S&C components. And working with athletes is working with other staff and building your team. And I mean, there's a lot of good books out there. Brett Bartholomew, his work around the different archetypes and that sort of thing that you may have within your group, and what sort of people work well together. And Ron McKeefery talks about do you have lions or dogs or goats and cats or whatever as part of your team? If you've got too many lions in the cage, you're going to have people butting heads. So, and sometimes you don't have the opportunity to pick your staff. You get who you're given. But if you do get to pick your staff, it's a lot of people like to pick staff that are similar to themselves, which is good in the start because everyone's going, oh yeah, that's a really cool idea. But if you're all pretty strong-willed, well, you're going to have stuff where heads are butting, and that's okay because you need to have conflict to be able to grow and move on. But it depends on you as a leader, what you're willing to accept from the staff within your team. But I think it goes back to anything. You've got to have a good plan around what you want your staff to do throughout the season, and then how that's broken down into like your pre-season requirements. The post-season where you're actually doing your planning and that sort of thing to move into pre-season. Then they're in season. I think having really good role clarity helps your staff to understand, where are my borders? Where do I step into and out of? Am I allowed to move into that rehab realm? Well, no, it's not part of your designation, but you can talk to the person who's doing the rehab around what they're doing and then how you can integrate with them. But it's about making sure you stay within your lane, that you understand your role clarity, and then it's where do you operate within that overall plan. And it's you can start that plan out, and I've been in places where you'll have a plan and it doesn't get touched on again until the end of the season, and people go, well, what went wrong? Well, did we stick to our plan? No. So I think having that touch point on a weekly basis with your whole staff is super important. getting them together as a group, going through each of their areas with them as a group, going, well, what's happening here? We're talking with the physio, we're talking with the doctor. We may have that in nutrition, your performance dietitian involved in that process, your S&C, your speed, your rehab people, all in the same room, because your rehab guy might be having a problem. You go, that may be a strength issue that we can help you with. And then the sports dietitian says, well, have they been, having their subs as they're supposed to? What's their diet like? Oh, yeah, the diet's not great. They've put on a bit of weight during this injury period. So, how can everyone help? So I think it's having that forum where everyone's got a right to jump in and do stuff. But when it comes to the actual execution of the role, that one person's responsible for the execution of that role. But there's an opportunity for input at any one time. I think, and also just sharing, the wins and losses with the group as well. Like, what can we do better? What did we do well that ended in this result of this great rehab that we did? So there's just giving them that opportunity to work together as a group is really important. And there's been different organisations and stuff I work in where things become really siloed. Well, the S&C do their stuff, and biomechanists do their own thing, nutrition do their own thing, and that sort of thing. And that's where headbutting starts, and players or athletes get mixed messages in terms of where they should be going and what they should be doing in terms of trying to be the best they can be. So getting everyone together, having everyone on the same page is super important.
Yeah, it's one of the worst things, I think, as a team, when you say something but then someone else says something and the athlete gets that mixed message and they just don't know who to believe. And that they should believe you, but they should also believe the other person as well. And it just comes back to those communication skills, and you need to be delivering the same message and be on the same page. Even if you do butt heads about it, you got to swallow your ego a bit and understand that this coach or physio or doctor has another viewpoint that might actually be right, and you need to swallow your pride a bit and your ego and trust them to get the outcome. And always remember put the athlete first, not you first as well.
Yeah, definitely.
No, that's awesome. So in your opinion, because you've had the opportunity to train so many athletes, what separates the great athletes from the good athletes out there?
Well, it's probably, two things. I think consistency is probably the biggest thing. And what I mean by consistency is they do what they're supposed to do. They get through all the training they need to do. They look after themselves. Their nutrition's on point. Their recovery's on point. They're just doing all those little things that they need to do to be successful. And then the other component is the determination to be able to execute that. I've seen that in so many of the great athletes. They're just the consistent ones who turn up every time. They put their best effort into everything they do to get the result they want to get.
Yeah, it's great advice, and you see it all the time as well. The ones who show up, do the work, even when they don't feel 100% that day, they're still going to come in and do the work and give the best for that session, and also work on some little skills as well. They're not just focusing on the gym, they're also focusing on the craft of their position in their sport and doing those 1%ers, especially when no one's looking, just out there throwing the ball against a fence panel or throwing at a light pole if you're a hooker, or just doing some light kicking sessions, and they make the difference. And I know you could name about 1,000 players who have done all that and gone on to higher honours.
Yeah, and I think also, the great athletes ask questions and want to be involved in their program. They want to understand why they're doing it and how it's going to make them better. So I think encouraging them to be part of the process is an important component as well.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely agree with that. And once they understand all that and built up their knowledge, you can ask for their input as well. I know Nick McGill from the All Blacks likes to allow players to choose what exercise that they want to do, and helps guide them as well. So once they've gotten a good understanding of what and how to program, allow them to have some input into that program, and then you'll get better buy-in from them as well.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
So, conscious of time, we're going to go into the Triple H. So one of my favorite subjects is learning more about yourself there, John. So hardship. Can you think of a hardship in your rugby coaching career, or just S&C coaching in general, that sort of stands out And how did you get through this hardship, and what did you learn through the hardship as well?
Um, God, there's a lot of different examples. I think probably the biggest one was just before COVID hit, with the Brumbies. There was a lot of bushfires and that in the Canberra area, and we're in our pre-season, and the guys were off on their Christmas break, so they had that 8 days off over the Christmas period, and there was a lot of smoke in Canberra, and the air quality was really poor. And the head coach rang me and said, "We've got to move somewhere else to train." And I went, "Right, how are we going to do this?" So between Christmas and New Year, we were trying to find a location where there wasn't smoke. And anyway, long story short, we ended up in Newcastle. So we had a lot of logistical issues to work out around accommodation, where we're going to be, the gyms we're going to use, fields for doing the running sessions and that sort of thing, and just not knowing Newcastle at all was really challenging. And I was fortunate I had a few contacts in Newcastle, and Rugby Australia were able to help us out with accommodation and that sort of thing, so we could continue training to be part of the Super Rugby competition that year. So we got up there, and we were really fortunate through some contacts at Newcastle Knights to be able to utilise the Newcastle Knights Juniors training ground out at the University of Newcastle. So we were using that facility there, and they had a gym there, and we got up there and went out and did our first training session. And it was a stinking hot day. It was pretty ordinary. It was our first session back after Christmas, so they had to do a 1.2 and all that sort of thing. And there were a few boys who didn't cope really well with it, and we had the gym set up and went up there in the gym, and it got to the end of the gym session, and Benny Norcott, myself, and Josh Australian were standing around. We said, "I can't believe how well this day's gone." And all of a sudden, one of the boys has said, "Oh, what's that?" We're going, "What?" And they pointed over at the door, and there was all this water pouring out from under the door in the gym. I go, what the hell is that? And what had happened was one of the sewage pipes at the university had burst. So we had, it was come later to be named as the Poonami through the gym, and we had players going along the chin-up bars through the chambers, monkeying along to try and get away from the Poonami. So again, we had to adapt and change, and had to locate a local gym in Newcastle. There was also a rugby gym at the Newcastle University that we were able to use. But throughout that whole week, we had a number of little things thrown at us that we had to adapt and be able to change to be able to get the success we had. And it was a fantastic camp that we had to put together in a 5-minute time period essentially, and rely on people, the Newcastle people and sporting folk in Newcastle to help us out. So that was probably one of the start of that year, which was a massive challenge in terms of, we had the smoke from the bushfires, then we had an outbreak of mumps with the Brumbies, and then COVID shut us down, and we had to do the remote training through that whole COVID period. Then they restarted the competition, which was an Australian-only competition, and we were fortunate enough to get the money at the end of the season by beating the Reds. So we overcome a lot of adversity throughout that whole year to get a successful result. So that was probably the biggest hardship I've had in terms of coaching and controlling a group of people through a really tough time.
Yeah, and you just sort of look back on it now, and you can enjoy it a bit more, and have a laugh or two about the shitstorm that you had in the gym, and just
Exactly.
the mumps as well. And you just sort of look back on it and like, wow, we can literally get through anything together as a team. And if we've got a good support staff around us, doesn't matter what they throw at us, we're still going to succeed.
Yeah,
No,
definitely.
that's awesome. So next one, hero. Who is your hero, and why is this person your hero?
Um, yeah, it's a pretty tough. I think I've had a number of different heroes throughout my life, and that sort of thing, and generally comes down to people who've sort of overcome like a hardship and shown determination. And that, for me, close to home is my daughter, and her battle with cystic fibrosis, and that every day is a real hardship that she has to do, and she gets through it and works hard at trying to be better every day. More recently, I've been listening to some audio books of Dave Goggin. Love Dave Goggin. He's unbelievable. The life he's led. Going from not a great home situation as a child into serving in 3 different military organisations and becoming a fire jumper and overcoming different injuries to be able to run 240 miles. I can't even get my head around running 240 miles and then just deciding to Forrest Gump it across Miami, start at one border and run to the other. So I think he's someone I'm really like listening to at the moment, and just his determination to be better at everything he does is really inspiring. And then from an athlete I trained was Kim Brennan, who won the gold medal in the single sculls at the Rio Olympics. Her absolute determination and single-mindedness to be the best in the world was truly inspiring, and the way she attacked her training, and one example of her willingness to train hard was she did a race, the head of the is it the George Rio? Oh, I've forgotten, in Boston. Anyway, big race in Boston. She flew back to Australia, arrived back in Canberra on an 8:30 flight, was in the gym with me at 10 o'clock training after winning this big race, over 24 hours of travel, come in, and it was a really hard session we had. We did a lot of strength endurance with the rowers, and it sounds really contrary because they are out on the water doing a lot of Ks and that sort of thing, but as I come to understand with rowing, it was really important to maintain their lean muscle mass, because once the Ks went up in the boat, their lean muscle mass dropped off and the power they could put into the oar dropped off. So we were doing some crazy circuit stuff, and it's probably a whole podcast on its own, so I won't go into that. But just her coming in on the back of this trip, she ended up in the garden throwing up afterwards, which I don't take any pride in that sort of thing, but it was more her determination to come in and get a session done that was unreal. And then in her heat over in Brazil was terrible water conditions, and she didn't go so well in a heat, managed to get through, but then when she made the final, it was just her and Daylight were second. So it was incredible the performance she put in there. So 3 heroes of me and my daughter, Dave Goggin and Kim Brennan would be 3 big ones.
Shout out to all 3 of them. That's awesome. Yeah. And the last one, highlight. What is a highlight that stands out in your career so far? Thinking about this, there's a number of key ones. I think early on, working with Canberra Capitals women's basketball, we fortunate enough to win 6 championships in 10 years, and that was working with a group of women that didn't necessarily buy into S&C as much as they could have early on, but they really come to see the value of it, and getting those championships with 2 different coaches was phenomenal. Winning the Tokyo Sevens with the Rugby Sevens boys, where we come to a final and we only had 9 fit players able to play, and get that result was incredible. The Olympic stuff, as I said, Kim Brennan, a fantastic highlight. Even the men's 4 that won in Tokyo, they sent me a video prior to it saying they still sung the team song and did Footy Jump Friday leading into it, and I hadn't worked with them for 3 or 4 years, so that was a great highlight. The men's K2 that won the K1000 in K2 1000 in Tokyo, again working with those guys was great. And I think Brumbies that season I talked about before, I think the biggest highlight was
going over to Waikato when we beat the Chiefs in Waikato. We were the first Australian team to beat a New Zealand team in New Zealand for I don't know how many years. It was a long time. And the way they won that game was just phenomenal. They just played so well. So, yeah, they're not one highlight, a few different highlights there. But I guess I'm fortunate enough to and grateful to have had those opportunities to work with such great players and athletes across multiple sports.
And plenty more highlights to come in the careers coming up. So I'm really excited to see what else is installed for you there, Mitch.
Yeah.
That's good. So last couple of questions. If you could only give one piece of advice for rugby athletes out there, what would you say?
As I spoke about before, it's just that consistency. Be consistent in what you do and be able to switch on and off. I think that's an important characteristic. Like, when you step across the line onto the field, you're there to train and to get better and be the best version of yourself. When you step into the gym, same deal. If you're going into the recovery centre, you're there to make sure you're getting your body ready for that next thing. So, when you cross the line, your mind's on, you switched on. When you walk out of the gym or whatever, relax, live your life and do what you need to do. But, once you cross the line, business head on, get stuff done and be consistent. Just make sure you're doing the stuff you're there to do and you're doing it to the best of your ability.
And would you say the same if you're giving advice for S&C coaches out there, or would you change it a little bit?
S&C coaches too. I think, you've got to, prepare yourself for the session that's coming and be able to read the room. You cross the line again. Everyone's got stuff going on in their lives outside of their job. But once you step on the gym, on the field, you've got to be that person that's going to inspire, people to greatness to be able to achieve their goals, to be the best they can at their sport. Be it rugby league, rowing, softball, cricket, whatever it is. You've got to be able to inspire people. And if you're being a sergeant major or you're just trying to be the cool dude or whatever, have a think about, the people who've inspired you in your life. How can you be that inspiration to someone else to get people to do stuff they don't necessarily want to do, to take people to levels they didn't think they'd ever get to. So, what type of person is that? You need to be able to create that positive environment, as I spoke about earlier on, to be able to get people to do stuff.
100%. And I think I would add on to that is something you said quite a while ago as well, is the standard given is the standard seen as well. And you're referring that to just, basic cleanliness of the gym. If you're leaving the gym in a mess for the next people, then that's not a good standard, given and seen. And you need to make sure you're ticking off those 1% as an S&C coach, but also as athletes as well.
That's a massive one. And just setting that example for your athletes to, be respectful of their environment they're in, and when you go to someone else's environment, you leave it the same way you found it, if not better. To quote the All Blacks, sweep the shed sort of thing. You've got to be prepared to do that extra little bits of stuff just to make sure that everything functions smoothly.
100%. So who should be my next guest on the podcast? Is there any coaches or athletes out there that should jump on for a chat?
Look, I think, Michael Speranza is one that really comes to mind. He's, worked in rugby league and worked at the AIS and done a bit of stuff across multiple sports at the AIS, then worked with the Reds. So he was a strength and power coach there and did some rehab there, and now he's at the Broncos as their strength and power coach. And the success that the Broncos are experiencing at the moment, comes down to some of the work that Michael's been doing there, and it's very fascinating, like his PhD work around tackle success and things like that. So I think really relevant guy to have a chat to, particularly in this whole rugby environment.
100%. I'll definitely reach out to him. So thanks for joining me today, Mitch. It's been awesome to get your insight, experience, and just general knowledge into the world of S&C, but also the world of, Rugby Union, Rugby League, and Rugby Sevens. I got a lot from this, and I know everyone else will get a lot from this as well. So thanks again for joining me today.
No worries. Pleasure, Kieran. And just give a big shout out to all the S&Cs out there, and make sure you're part of the ASCA. That's a really big thing to be part of an association, so that, you're working with other people and getting better at everything you're doing every day.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't stress more of going to your local, meetings of your special interest groups or whatever they're called now. I can't remember the correct term now, but just going to those and learning from different coaches and building your network, and then, going to the big event of the year, which is the ASCA conference as well. Like, I learned so much last year, and it was so good to see, coaches I haven't seen in a while, but also meet some new coaches as well, and expand my network. It's been awesome.
Yeah. So those networks are the PDNGs, they're called now. So your professional development networking groups. So there's a group in every major city. So keep an eye out for those emails and stuff that come through from the ASCA or on the social feeds as well.
Yeah, 100%. So thanks again, Mitch. I'll catch you later.
Pleasure, Kieran. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby S&C podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby S&C on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby S&C today and take your game to the next level.